Thanks for staying up later. Martin Short makes a return visit. He's Elliot Garfield these days on Broadway in the revival of The Goodbye Girl. Now, as we tape, you have been nominated for the Drama Desk Award and for the Tony Award. But we don't know if you've won or not won. So
no, we don't know.
Let's take it two ways.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Bob. It's good to be a winner.
2, 3, 4. Now, you were robbed. I certainly would have voted for you.
Those guys are hacks. And it's a Hollywood backlash, is what it was. Bob. Is it Bob?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good of you to remember.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
None of this success has gone to your head.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
This is actually where
What success it's been.
And this is where you wanted to be, really, for all the SCTV stuff and the year on Saturday Night Live and the movies. I take it that the stage is the thing that you really yearned for when you were a kid.
Well, I would say the first 7 years of my career in Canada as a Canadian actor was always doing stage. And so this is, you know, most actors start off on stage because that's where you get paid the least amount of money,
yeah.
Or the less amount of money, as I grammatically like to say. And and that's when you have the most fun. Because you do the same thing every night, there's less pressure. You get to perfect a role, but you get to have fun, and the company becomes your friends. And
this probably is night in, night out when you go to the theater, especially since the performance has been well received, less pressure than the creative deadlines of Saturday Night Live or SCTV, where you got to top yourself every week and come up with something new.
Yeah, SCTV was less pressure. That was a lot of pressure, but Saturday Night Live was the most intense, you know. Only because you could be a hit on Saturday night, and then it was now Tuesday, and you had no material.
Yeah.
And you felt like a failure.
You knew coming in that you only wanted to do 1 year on Saturday Night Live.
Right.
Was that because you already had other things planned, or because you had a good understanding that you could only perform at that peak for a year and then stuff would start to taper off?
I had a good lawyer. 1 year. No, I don't know. It seemed like, what if I didn't like it? Or what if it was, you know, I'd already done SCTV. So those were intense hours. And I now had a little baby girl. And it just seemed like this was something that was going to engulf. You know, I don't know how to do those jobs and just go in, write a sketch, write 2 sketches, go home and have dinner. I would, you know, if I was told the final sketches had to be in by 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning, I would pace until 3 a.m. Wednesday morning and then type up the sketch. I was like that in school, too, so it was constantly, I never left this building, 30 Rock.
And I saw when you came back in here, as they were miking you up and whatnot, you saw a lot of familiar faces that you hadn't seen for a while. It was a happy experience for you.
Absolutely. Oh, no. I mean, I had a ride. Everyone was very nice to me when I did Saturday Night Live. I had no bad experiences that way, but it was just a lot of work, so you kind of felt like you'd done it, and now it's time to do something else.
Is it always a pleasure, or does it bother you a little when people call for characters that you really haven't done for a long time? When they call for Ed Grimley or Jackie Rogers Jr. if you're walking down the street?
It's great. I think, you know, because it's, first of all, I mean, they're part of me, and secondly, I mean, people wouldn't ask for them if they didn't like them.
You told me, this has to be like 4 years ago, the last time you were on the show, you said you had never met Pat Sajak to that point. A pretty decent guy, we all must say.
Oh, very decent. Hairdo for days.
Have you met him since?
Still have not met Pat. Padilla. I haven't met him.
He never jotted you a note or told you that he'd seen Grimley's bit?
No, I haven't met him. I hear he's a nice guy, though.
But he is a nice guy.
Yeah, a very decent guy.
A very decent guy. But that strikes me as odd, that he'd be so central to this thing.
Oh, because he's wrapped up in himself. Well, wait a second.
How did you approach doing Elliot Garfield, where, you know, this is already pretty firmly established, this play and these characters, pretty well established in people's minds? Did that have any effect in the way you worked toward it?
Well, not really, because it's a different medium, you know. I mean, if someone said, hey, do you want to do a remake of The Goodbye Girl as a film, then you'd be insane, unless the check was good. But to do it as a musical is such a completely different way to do it, that there's no similarity in Richard Dreyfuss's performance and mine.
Are people surprised that you can sing?
Yeah, they are surprised. They are. You can actually feel it in the audience.
Are you surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. I've been singing for years, Bobby.
See, all I could think of was, give me a C, a bouncy C.
Well, no, that's a different kind of singer. That's a songwriter.
Right, a Brill Building guy.
He worked in the Brill Building. Irving Cohen wrote 1,200 songs a month, all of them dead. If he were here today, he'd say, you know, Bob Costas, you're quite a guy. Give me a C, a bouncy C. Bob Costas, you're quite a guy. I'd say you stand about oh so high. You interview people, and that's a good thing. But and that's not so good. And whatever the hell else you want to put in there. I'm burning to play this part, and no one's ever longed to play it more. It's a role that I'm so right for, that I'm willing to fight for. We can both create a work of art. And I promise to stay for the run of the play. I know I can play this part. I'd always been a singer. I used to like sing in Canadian talk shows. You know, I'd come on just to sing.
What's the difference between a Canadian talk show, if there is any, and the typical American talk show?
Well, one talk show is seen, and the other isn't. No, actually, it wasn't a talk show. It was a variety show. No, this is a classic. Norm Crosby hosted a show called Everything Goes. And
in Canada?
In Canada. It was one of those situations where they were almost going to go with a Canadian rep company, which at that time was Gilda Radner, Danny Aykroyd, Valerie Bromfield, Jane Eastwood, and myself. And at the last second, they panicked because these people weren't well known, so they got an American star, Norm Crosby. And Norm came and did the show, and he was the host of the show, Everything Goes. And I was on every night, and I would come on about once a week and sing, you know, a ballad from Pippin. Everything has its season. And, you know, I had suspenders and kind of, and I'd get nervous and dry mouth and forget lyrics. And
Norm would do his usual thing?
Norm said, well, one time I was on, I followed Tony Bennett. Tony, it was a 90-minute show, and Tony was supposed to be on the first 15 minutes, and I was in the last 15 minutes, but there was a snowstorm, and Tony got there late, so Tony killed with 2 songs, and then, Mr. Sunshine for me, and they went nuts, and then they, in the middle of his song, they said, you're next. I said, you can't, you know, follow a singer with a singer, and they said, watch, and they set my stool up downstage as Tony was killing upstage. And then Norm Crosby's, you know, Tony finished, and he said, thanks, Tony, that was really good. Now here's a kid who really sings good, Marty Short. And I had to follow Tony Bennett. I was singing You and I, the Stevie Wonder song. And I was so nervous that I not only sang the wrong lyrics, I forgot them, started to make them up, and then inadvertently started to impersonate Tony Bennett. So I was going, here we are, on earth together, it's you and me. And I'm already wrong, because it's you and I. And I went, our love was made, it was made in heaven. I was just a disaster. I used to be terrified of forgetting this. But I sang, you know, in these shows all the time. But once you become a satirist, you can't then, you know, come on the Letterman show and sing the score from La Mancha. It doesn't work that way.
Do people tell you that they observe old characters they're familiar with? Ed Grimley here, or Irving Cohen somehow there, in the motions that you make on stage? Do they see glimpses of that?
Well, you know, no, I think it is that, yes. And I think that what happens is that they're looking for it. They're hoping to see it.
Yeah.
You know, and when I was rehearsing, there's a number that I do in the first act, and Ellie Garfield's really, it's a very energized number. And the choreographer, Graziella Danielle, said, and at one point, I think you should come out and you should dance high like this. And I said, if I raise my arms above my shoulders, they'll say it's Ed Grimley doing you know. She said, so is that not good? So why don't you be straitjacketed, the whole thing? Are you doing Ed Grimley? I said, no. She said, then I don't want this conversation to be had. I said, I don't understand your language, and did it anyway. Lamb chop, you're living on an Elliot Garfield grant. Mr. Nice Guy, you're living on an Elliot Garfield grant. Don't thank me. You're living on an Elliot Garfield. She was right. She was right. You can't be, you know, I can feel the audience if I go, "'Cause you're," and I'm like this, and they're all going, because they want to see that. You're living on an Elliot Garfield grant. Don't thank me.
And Duracell, you can't top the copper top.
Back now with Martin Short, Elliot Garfield these days in the musical version of The Goodbye Girl on Broadway.
At the Marquis Theater, I think, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
You're not staying at the Marriott Marquis, are you, just so you can be nearby?
Just on certain nights.
What was it like doing Godspell in Toronto more than 20 years ago?
More than 20 years ago? It was, well, I mean, that was my first job. That was great. And it was this enormously talented cast. Paul Schaefer, right, was the piano player. Gilda Radner, and Andrea Martin, and Eugene Levy, Dave Thomas, Victor Garber, Don Scardino, a lot of great, talented people.
A huge percentage of them winding up at SCTV.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is this coincidental, or is there some Canadian comedic sensibility that particularly appeals?
Well, I do think that the Canada, Toronto particularly, I mean, I can only speak for Toronto because that's where I'm from, but it's at a hub. You know, we would get the Pythons before the States got the Pythons through BBC. We would get Canadian television, we would get British television, and we would get American television. Mm-hmm. So we were constantly taking in, and that's why SCTV, a show that's, you know, pioneered truly satirizing television that way, it was, in a way, made sense that it would be done in Canada by that group.
Because they're bombarded by so many different...
Yeah, they had so many different places to pull from.
What, if any, character have you ever done where you said afterwards, you saw it played back, man, that is so far over the edge that maybe it's funny, but if I was the person being done here, I'd be really hurt. I couldn't find it in my sense of humor to say, yeah, that's okay.
Whenever you do someone, you have to... I think the gimmick of doing someone, impersonating, is if you have to show that they're good and then show the warts. But you can't just show the warts. So I can't think that there was anyone that I really thought I was just good old-fashioned being mean. Because, you know, you could control it. In SCTV, where I primarily did pieces like that, you would edit them yourself. And if you looked at it and said, gee, you know, I think that's over the top, you'd alter it. So I don't really think that I did.
Do you have to be, at least to some extent, a fan of everybody you do?
I think to get the voice, to get that person, to understand that person. Sometimes you know, someone would come up and say, gee, can you do Gore Vidal? And you'd want to be on the show. You'd say, sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you'd say to the researcher, get me Gore Vidal tapes, as many as you can get. And then you'd go home and you'd start studying. And for one take, you'd get Gore Vidal. But generally, if you're doing Jerry Lewis, or if you're doing, you know, I did Robin Williams, I was fans of these people. That's how I learned their voices to begin with.
So it was something that you were sort of internalizing even without realizing it, and then when it was time to do it, you tapped into what was
you know, when I
already
would
there.
watch Jerry Lewis as a kid, and then, you know, and gotta get my old tuxedo. Now it's time to satirize Jerry, and I know that voice is from my childhood.
So many performers of your generation are really show business savvy, grow up watching television, even if their sensibility seems different than some of the people they may satirize, there's a certain affection for the Jerry Lewises and the people like that. Now in Neil Simon, you've got a genuine icon. Right. Someone you couldn't help but admire, and I would assume you're very familiar with almost everything he had done.
Right.
Did that give you pause before you went into this, wanting to do justice to his work?
Oh, absolutely. But you know what happens is that it's like, I guess, meeting people that you admire on any level or any profession. if you're in a room with Neil, you might be nervous the first time you meet him. Within a very short period of time, he's laughing at something you've done. He's very generous with his laughter. So right away, you've made Neil Simon laugh. And he doesn't just laugh. The glasses come off, the tears, he goes like this.
Yeah.
Ah! You know, that happens. So suddenly, a lot of he doesn't carry around this legendary thing as much as you yourself do, assuming that he would. So within a very short period of time, he's just Mr. Simon.
You fared better than the play in terms of the reviews. Almost everybody liked what you did.
What do you mean almost, Bob?
Everybody. I said almost because I figured someone will fax me something from someplace where someone disagreed. But let's say everybody.
Let's say.
Everybody loved what you did.
Thank you.
Did that make you feel ambivalent going back in? Because the play itself had gotten at best mixed reviews. You'd gotten great reviews.
Well, the reality was that, actors always say this, I really did not read the reviews.
Come on.
No, I didn't, because the stage is different. If they say you're brilliant, if they say, you know, that one move when Martin Short reaches for the vase, and it's a magical way he holds his hand, now you got to do it the next night. And so you're trying to be magical and wonderful. So it's better just to stay away from them. I mean, people tell you that they're good or bad. You can't help but get feedback, but I never read specifics. But the show got mixed reviews, but for every, negative review, got a rave review. So that kind of cancels each other out.
So I just find it hard to believe. You're opening up on Broadway. How could you not grab the papers the next day? Because when it comes to the stage, it's different. The stage is more directly affected by reviews.
Yeah,
than television or
but
even
you're going
movies.
to be told. I'm talking about reading them yourself as opposed to someone saying, well, they're good for you, they're okay for the... I'm talking about generalizations. I don't really truthfully care about critics. I know it's a cliche, but I used to.
Mm-hmm.
But I then actually became bored by it, because there were too many times where you would read a review and say, not something you were in, but something that someone else is in, and say, that guy is nuts. That is a terrible movie. How can he like that movie? So in the next week, if he liked you in a movie, gee, he suddenly got intelligent. I just don't respond to it. I mean, everyone has a right to an opinion, but I just don't... the thing is about reviews is you know yourself. The only time reviews can affect you is if you know you're not very good in something and you're hoping that you won't get caught. But if I do something that I think is really, really good, and some guy who, if I had dinner with, I'd want to take, cyanide capsules, because he'd be that boring, says, oh, I don't think he's that interesting. And you say, have you held a hand mirror recently? This doesn't affect me at all.
Chevy Chase was on a while ago, and conversation got around to the Three Amigos, and he said that was not as good a movie as it should have been. You share his view?
I don't really talk about these movies, because, you know what happens? You end up talking about a movie, and it's, again, your opinion. And you've made it, whether you adore it or whether you are in the middle. And meanwhile, the people who have seen that movie, or any of the movie that you might dissect later on, adore it, and suddenly you're kind of saying to them, you shouldn't have liked it. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's better kept private, post-mortem on movies that you make. You put them, especially comedies, because comedies are so subjective. You put them out there, and I'll tell you about Three Amigos that, certainly more than anything I've done, people come up with the greatest affection and love for that movie, especially kids. So, what's perfect? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess especially a comedy, as you say.
Yeah.
If it makes somebody laugh, that's the end of it. It defies analysis beyond that.
It's amazing. There's such a wide range of reaction to comedy. Some people like physical comedy. Some people think it's stupid. Some people like Woody Allen. Some people think it's self-indulgent. Who's right? I don't think anyone's right.
Speaking of physical comedy, the wedding coordinator guy in Father of the Bride.
Wrong, the wedding coordinator.
Yeah, pretty much over the top and back.
What do you mean?
Oh, maybe that's just the way I saw it.
You should have seen the big takes.
I love the weddings at the home. They're very personable, very warm, and very fabulous. Oh, so January 6th, give us 7 months. Uh-oh, hello, that's 5 months. 5 months, not much. But that don't bother me so much because it's a little bit tight, but we can do it and it will be spectacular. I was like, don't worry about that. So now, let's see. This is what I suggest. I suggest that we select the cake first. Okay. You know, because the cake very often determine what kind of wedding that you end up having. So let's just choose the cake, okay?
Yeah. There was some chewed up scenery there.
How much fun was that to do?
Oh, totally. The most fun. Because, you see, the thing is about those guys is insane characters. There is no limitation. The only secret, I think, is to do them sincerely. But, I mean, I went to a wedding. I actually went to a wedding after I made that movie. And there was a wedding coordinator there. And I looked at, and I said, Jesus, why didn't I go with those shoes? You know, I mean, you know, it's amazing. You know, you think, you know, that character is broad, then you go out in life, and it's Perry Como in comparison.
Just as we had 2 openings, now 2 closers. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Award winning Martin Short.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And as I said that night, oh, baby.
Don't go away. Our thanks to Tony Award nominee Martin Short.
Thanks. Damn them and their choices.
But really,
What?
it's the work that counts, not awards.
Not for me.
There you have it. See you later.